Welcome to Talking Tech, the podcast all about technology. In this episode, and might I add that this is actually the third time that John Stevenson has joined us from CoreView. So welcome to the studio. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
It's lovely to have you to return.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure to kind of welcome you in. But I'm quite excited because in this episode, we're going to be doing something slightly different. We're going to be obviously talking about a few different resources. In this one in particular, we're going to be talking all about the state of AI in Microsoft 365, which is a new report that's just come out from yourselves. And, I want to know a little bit more about it. Why AI needs guardrails before it touches the tenant. And more importantly, if you could perhaps maybe give us a little bit in terms of the detail around the background of the report, that would be fantastic.
What a build up, Catherine. Thank you so much. It's an absolute pleasure to be back here. And I'll just give you a little bit of context around the report. I should say that in a very timely manner, today CoreView is launching what we believe is the world's first AI administrator for Microsoft 365. Wow. So in addition to going through the report, I'm also going to say a few words at the end about what that is and what that means.
Absolutely.
But to the point in hand, the report came about because the tail end of last year, late 2025, CoreView conducted a survey. We asked several hundred IT leaders, so people of IT director level and above, of organizations of over 1,000 Microsoft 365 users across the US, the UK and Europe. We asked them what kind of challenges they were facing in terms of managing Microsoft 365. What part they saw AI potentially playing in helping them cope with those challenges and surmount those challenges, and what they saw the roadblocks might be. So the opportunity and the anxieties. And from that, the report then goes on to make some suggestions about the kinds of changes that organizations are going to need to make, and how they might go about some kind of practical introduction of AI into solving the big challenge of managing Microsoft 365.
Fantastic. I think it's fascinating that, again, companies have to always be evolving and kind of changing and bringing out new things. And obviously, more importantly, we are here to talk about kind of the influence and the impact that AI is having. Everybody's talking about it, but actually what level of AI they're talking about, it's not just a kind of a chat GPT, something that's thrown in there. So again, I'm really keen to understand from CoreView's point of view, how that impacts everything else. So I actually took a look over the report myself. It had some really great insights and stats. I think it's fascinating to understand that and learn. It's broken into 4 sections, which I think is quite helpful. We're going to take a look at each one in a bit more detail later on in the episode. But I couldn't help smiling when I saw the name of the first section. Microsoft 365 wasn't supposed to be this hard. Could you just take us through some of the findings and some of the thinking, as to why this? And I know we've got a couple of really useful slides which we'll upload.
It's a cracking headline, isn't it? And the subheading should have been, by the way, we're at breaking point, because actually the overwhelming conclusion when you read the report on how people perceive the challenge they have managing this platform is that it's really overwhelming teams. That's the only way to put it. And I think it's wise, it's appropriate for us to take a step back for a moment and consider how that's come to be. We roll back to the 2010s and we were talking about Microsoft Word and Excel and PowerPoint. Yep. And really in the time since then, slowly, as an evolutionary process, almost at times imperceptibly, this platform has morphed. And it's morphed into this amazing, very sophisticated, collaborative platform. It's got great collaboration tools. It's got a security backbone. It's got an identity backbone. And taken in totality, this thing has become the digital workspace of choice for the vast majority of organizations. And that's great. That's great. However, it's vast. It's absolutely vast. 60 plus applications and services, 18 plus administrative consoles, 10,000 plus configuration settings. So it's not only vast, but it's also complex. And that complexity manifests itself in, when you want to get something done, having to rove across these various interfaces and consoles in order to achieve that. in a largely manual fashion. And that's, I think, a key point we're going to come back to. So it's vast, it's complex. And the third thing, it's constantly changing. Yeah? You'll know, even as a user, you fire up Teams and you figure out how to do something, and you tweak this and you tweak that and you get it just how you want it, and you go away and you come back 2 weeks later, there's been an update and it doesn't work that way anymore. You need to do something else. You need to do something different. Imagine that situation, but magnified 100-fold by virtue of being someone responsible for the efficient and secure management of the tenant, of the 365 tenant. And the stats in this report really bear that out. When we asked people to grade the operational burden that they felt Microsoft 365 was imposing on the team, and 82% graded it as severe in terms of the operational load that's put upon the team. 34% said it was the biggest strain on IT team resource, and 22%, one in five said that they no longer felt they were able to manage or secure the tenant effectively.
Yeah, there's some impressive stats.
So they're quite startling numbers. What's interesting, in a way, what interests me is if you scrape beneath the surface and look at what's behind that, look at what's causing this load. It's things like having to conduct manual audits, manual compliance checks, generate custom reports, deal with user permissions. All, you would think, on the face of it, relatively simple tasks. But you know what? They're not. They're not, because they involve manually doing bits and pieces, roving across different consoles, admin consoles, in order to get things done. Increasingly having to get scripting and PowerShell scripts built and written, which adds latency into the process. And let's be honest, if PowerShell Pete or PowerShell Paul aren't in the office that week, if they're on vacation, then the latency gets a lot worse. So you have a situation where manual processes, having to rove across such a complicated platform, having to use lots of scripts, are really making this an onerous task, introducing human error and introducing risk, because it only takes one misconfiguration to dramatically change the organisation's security posture. So bottom line, the manual, script-heavy approach to managing Microsoft 365, it's not scaling. It's not delivering the performance, the compliance, the security that organisations want. And that, when you come down to it, is why there's an interest in seeing whether AI could help with the management challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's so interesting. Thank you so much for that. And so section 2, obviously we've spoken about at the beginning of the report. Section 2 of it looks at the AI's capability to help deal with this. I guess there's two things that also stand out. The first is that it could really help. And obviously you've mentioned some of that just a second ago. The second is there's a lot of anxiety about this. And, I hear this almost on a daily basis because, if you look at things like the World Wide Web, you've also got the dark web, there's two sides to a lot of these things. And that's the same with AI. Could you take us through some of your key findings? We also have a really good slide that we're going to show to everybody as well, which you can see here. But I'd love you to kind of go through section 2 for me.
Yeah, this is the Jekyll and Hyde chapter. So this is where you really see the two sides to the story. We talked to, we interviewed, we surveyed smart technical people who know about technology, so they know what, in theory, AI can do for them. They're fully aware of the potential value, the potential benefits. I think some 70%, in principle, could see genuine value in having AI act in an administrative capacity within the tenant. So there's no shortage of enthusiasm at all, in principle. However, obviously their jobs, quite rightly, rely on them being able to deliver quality of service, security, safety, compliance, all these other vital ingredients to the successful running of an organisation. And as a consequence, they have anxieties and they're cautious. And when you look at those anxieties and that caution, it really all comes down to a concern over the extent of the excess privilege that AI administrative capability could have within their tenant, and the consequent ability for it to do damage. I think it was 46%, something like that. Really rather concerned at the idea that an AI could end up operating independently of a human being in administering the tenant.
Yeah.
Some 44% concerned that it might have very broad privileges, and that those might even mysteriously extend beyond the original intended scope. We're almost in sci-fi land here, aren't we? And then a similar number concerned that it might not be possible to explain why some decision was taken.
Gosh.
How would you be able to audit, to trace, to explain to somebody, and ultimately potentially to rewind a set of procedures or decisions that an AI had taken? So whilst there's a definite perception of value, and the value is in a way is almost obvious. It's like, well, resetting people's passwords, generating custom reports, managing licenses, dealing with onboarding a user, dealing with offboarding a user, those tasks shouldn't be hard, and they are. They're manually laborious, and they often require scripting. They often require switching between different administrative consoles. If you have some automation to do that for you, that's got to be a great thing, hasn't it? Of course it has. However, there's caution and there's anxiety about the extent of the power that AI could have. And of course, there's the other obvious anxiety, which really we can all readily appreciate, which is people are anxious about their job security when it comes to the introduction of AI. And we look around, we see examples of this potentially happening, or indeed actually happening pretty well every day if you work in the technology sphere. Yeah. So leaders that we surveyed, they can see that too. They understand the risks there are for impacting the team's morale, and they understand the risks there are for very negative reaction towards the introduction of AI. So it is very much the Jekyll and Hyde story here. A lot of enthusiasm in principle, a lot of caution in practice.
Brilliant. No, and thank you for talking about the anxiety around it, because it's definitely something that, again, I'm seeing in the industry is people worried about their jobs and obviously what is going to happen with AI. So it's really important, I think, some of those manual jobs. But equally, you still need people to kind of train and to coach and to educate AI as well, don't you? So
absolutely right.
Whilst we may lose some jobs, I think there's, it's going to be an interesting part from there. So thank you so much for looking at that. So we're going to move on now to section 3. The report looks at how administering Microsoft 365 will change as AI establishes itself. Again, I know you've gone through that, but talk to us about some of the findings, and can you shed some light on the slide that we're just about to show in front of you? Again, you've got some really great statistics here. Yeah,
so I think this is where the report starts to move on to look at what conclusions we can draw from the survey results. And the first conclusion is blindingly obvious, which is it's coming no matter what. And the question becomes, how do you accommodate its arrival, and how do you make that work for you as an organisation? But that's the first real kind of conclusion from the survey, if you will. And I think the second conclusion is that there is going to be a shift away from hands-on management, if you will, into helping with the successful and secure automation of process, and then that's going to require a slightly more strategic view. So that, for example, there'll be probably some new functions in the team. There'll need to be a function that is able to configure and to tune AI capability. And the stats reflect a view as to the likelihood that will definitely be the case. And equally, there'll be some need for some kind of, I think, operator oversight. So essentially somebody that can stand over the machine and make sure it's doing the right things. Not only the right things, but if necessary can intercede. Yeah. And I think that's going to be a kind of new role, if you will. Yeah. And then thirdly, I think there'll be some kind of analyst role, a role that will be responsible for taking business goals and translating them into AI workflows. In essence, I think we'll see these new roles emerging, and alongside them we'll see new skills that they'll have to have. They'll have to have skills around developing guardrails, so that the AI can only operate within certain defined parameters. And we'll go on to discuss that in a little bit more detail later. We'll see the need to be able to just generally upskill in terms of AI capabilities. So all around the whole kind of prompt hygiene and workflows and approval processes, all that kind of thing. So as it arrives, I think we can readily appreciate that the team will start to change, and there'll be new functions and there'll be new skills. The nature of the work will undoubtedly evolve. I think that's the inevitable conclusion. And hopefully it will evolve in the right way, which we're going to come on and talk about in a moment, I think.
Fantastic. No, that's fantastic. It's great to kind of go through those. So the final section of the report, and for anybody watching out there in the audience, we will put the link to the report, and obviously there's a lot of really, really useful information that obviously we don't have time to go through. But the final section of the report makes a range of practical recommendations for moving the agenda forward. Would you be able to summarise that for me?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, before I do, think about the caution, think about the resistance, if you will. I'm worried the AI will be making decisions without a person involved. I'm worried that the AI will seemingly have permission and privilege this big, but in reality it'll be able to rove all around and do things this big. I'm worried I won't be able to see what the AI's done, or how it's done it, or why it did it, or roll back what it's done. So those concerns really need addressing from the get-go. And the report makes, I think, 3 important practical recommendations for people who are looking to make this move. And the first one is secure by design. Let me explain what I mean by that. By far the biggest challenge in Microsoft 365 management is the correct enforcement of privilege and permission, least privilege access. It's a problem for people. Before we start talking about robots, it's a problem for administration, for good administration, for safe, secure administration. Microsoft's native capabilities are very broad. They don't provide the kind of granular least privilege access that's needed. And so if you're going to start thinking about introducing an AI, probably the best place to start is to take the thinking about AI, put it to one side, and deal with the least privilege problem first. What does that mean? It means looking at your tenant and scoping how you could enforce granular, true least privilege access. So can you segment it in some way? Can you create administrative zones? And the administrator, be they a person or an AI, could only operate within that zone. So you can ensure that there's no unfortunate blast radius to whatever is going to happen. So could you segment it? Could you enforce administrative zones? Could you have approval workflows for actions within those zones? And really, you need to map that out, because you need that foundation to be right. If you build on a foundation of incredibly complicated permissions and not much granularity, you won't get a good result. If you build on a foundation of true least privilege access and highly granular permissions, then you're in a good place. So when we talk about secure by design, we're really talking about securing your tenant from the ground up first, before you start looking at the introduction of AI and automation. So I think that's the first recommendation, is secure by design. Okay. The second one is really, it sounds a bit odd or a bit of a strange thing to say, but don't start from scratch. In fact, the place to start is with what are your key use cases. Because if you know your key use cases are all to do with, resetting passwords, generating custom reports for whoever wants to report that particular week, and doing it quickly without having to get PowerShell Pete involved. If it's to do with diagnosing an access problem that a user has, whatever those key use cases are, then you want you want an AI that's going to deliver on those. If you just introduce some AI capability and the first time someone uses it and the team uses it, it delivers a lousy result. I mean, it's a bit like if you tried early doors with AI and it could come up with some completely nonsensical answer. When you're talking about somebody's day job here and you're talking about the organisation's efficiency and security here, so if you get a lousy result, you're not going to get good adoption. And if you don't get good adoption, it's going to be very hard to make the move. So don't start from scratch, start from your use cases, and then whether you're going to try and design your own AI and teach it about those use cases, or whether you're going to go and buy a third-party one, you'll be starting from a strong sort of standpoint of, I'm going to have technology here to automate whatever it is, password resets or whatever the particular example use case is, and you'll achieve success early doors. And if you achieve success early doors, you get adoption and you get momentum. So, secure by design. Don't start from scratch. And number 3, it really is a touchstone, I think, of the whole discussion, which is you want to be looking at augmentation, not replacement. You want your AI to be an additional member of the team. You want your people to be able to call on it to do things, but you want your people to be in the driving seat. The IT experts are the guys that need to be in the driving seat, and the AI needs to be there to help them deal with the complexity of the platform. So I think those are the 3 key recommendations that the report makes. Do secure by design. Don't start from scratch. Augment, don't replace.
Absolutely. And I think hopefully that will resonate with a lot of people, again, who are current administrators as well, obviously of Microsoft 365, and also the complexity they've seen in the past. So that's been so great. Thank you so much for that. Just before we finish, are there any final points you want to add? Now, we're going to take a look at another slide as well. So this is the final slide. I really wanted to share it with you, but could you talk to us about this piece?
Yeah, of course.
And also, again, the final report that we're going to share with anybody, are there any kind of key takeaways that you would kind of like to leave the audience with?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, it's a good report. I'd recommend that listeners, viewers, go and grab themselves a copy. It's available from the CoreView website. I suppose one of the overriding conclusions is essentially, if you think that you're overwhelmed by the challenge and the complexity of trying to manage this incredibly powerful, sophisticated, but frankly vast platform, you're not alone. If you're thinking about how AI could help, again, you're not alone, but also there are a lot of people having the same thoughts. And that what's needed are the right kind of safeguards, the right kind of guardrails in place to be able to introduce an AI so that it will deliver value, but it will do so in a contained and managed fashion. And I think those are the key takeaways, really. I'd also like to say a few words, if I may, about the AI administrator that CoreView has just launched. It's called Cori. They all have to have a name, don't they? So it's called Cori, and Cori is the world's first AI administrator for Microsoft 365. What Cori essentially enables someone to do is to interact in a chat GPT style interface with the AI in order for it to go and do tasks that would otherwise be manual, laborious, potentially error-prone, and involve lots of roving across the various components of the platform, and therefore manage their tenant more quickly, more speedily, and potentially as well more securely. So the sorts of use cases that we've been alluding to during this conversation, managing user access, password resets, ensuring that they've got their account set up properly, dealing with user permission problems, diagnosing why they've suddenly lost access to a SharePoint site that they thought they had access to. All those sorts of things become tasks that you can ask an AI about, not only what the current state is, but then tell it to go and deal appropriately with that current state. And the reason it's possible to do that with the CoreView AI administrator Cori is because it's been guardrailed around this concept of segmenting your tenant into zones so that it can operate securely within those zones. And I want to leave the viewers and the listeners with an example of what I mean by that in practice. So let's pretend that there's a problem with our finance department being under attack in some way. Yeah, maybe there's been some threat intelligence about this attack. Whatever the reasons, we know that there is a risk. There'll be a security team trying to deal with that risk. As a Microsoft team, there are some useful things that it would be prudent to do to help mitigate the risk. So, for example, we could check the finance group, see if there are any unused accounts lying around not doing anything, because they should probably be deactivated or turned off or closed off or removed or whatever else, just for, for kind of hygiene's sake. Yeah. So that's the first thing. Second thing, we should probably do a double check to make sure that everyone's got multi-factor authentication set up properly with a conditional access policy so that we can tell if someone's trying to pretend that they're Catherine when in fact they're in Southeast Asia somewhere or another. So we want to check that the MFA has been set up correctly. We might want to have a look and see if there are any external users who have mysteriously appeared in groups inside of 365 that the finance team use, because that could be a sign of something not being quite right. Yeah. We could also, very prudently, I think, go and check everybody's Exchange mailbox and make sure no one's got auto-forwarding on, particularly to an external domain of their messages, because that would be a definite giveaway that something wasn't right. Yeah. Now, there's some prudent tasks. This is potentially a time-critical situation. Depending on how good you are with Microsoft's interfaces, how good you are with PowerShell scripting, and how quickly you're able to respond, it could take you anything from 2 to maybe as much as 10 hours to get all that sorted correctly. Yeah. I just said it's a time-critical task. Yeah. What you can do with Corey, what you can do with CoreView's AI administrator is you can say to Corey, tell us about the accounts in the finance team. Are there any that are inactive and not being used? And not only will Corey come back and tell you, it'll say, what do you want me to do about them? And you can say, can you close the ones down that haven't been used for however long? And it will do so. You can say, has everyone got MFA appropriately configured and enforced? And it will tell you if someone hasn't. And then you can tell it to go away and enforce it. Yeah. Ditto with the external users lurking around inside groups the finance team are using. Are there any? And if there are, close them down. And finally, are there any Exchange mailboxes set up to do auto-forwarding? Well, it might not be, but if there are, switch them off. Yeah. You can do all that, and you can do it all in a matter of minutes, effectively. You can do it in a matter of seconds, using a simple prompt and response interface, without the need to wade through documentation and trundle across several admin consoles and ask for a favour from the PowerShell scripting guy to get it done. And that, I think, is an example of where an AI is not only performing a mundane manual process for you, they're adding value to the security responsiveness of the team. And that's why I think it would be relevant for people listening to this podcast today, watching this podcast today. Yeah. Get over to the CoreView website, take a look at Corey. I know the names are what they are, but take a look at the AI administrator for Microsoft 365 and see for yourself how it could help you with the management of your tenant.
Absolutely. No, thank you so much. That's been so insightful. It's been really interesting. As you've just said, really important to kind of download the report. So that just leaves me to say thank you so much for joining us again in the studio. It's been an absolute pleasure. Make sure you download the report because it does have some really good, content, some fantastic statistics, and check out the episode coming soon.